All right. Remember, of course, we are still talking about that Lady R probe. The president yesterday speaking to the nation about this issue and talking about the fact that the panel has found that there was no evidence that South Africa supplied arms to Russia. So there's been a lot of talk about this one. Political parties are divided on their reaction to this particular matter, saying that they would like to see some of the terms of reference of this particular panel, while others are saying it puts the matter to bed because this has now been clarified by the president. So certainly a lot of talk here at home about this particular report and others calling for it to be made public in its entirety. But the president saying that there are some military operations that they do not want to be jeopardized by this particular report being made public in its entirety. But let's have some perspective now of how Washington has received this particular news. And we speak to Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who is joining us. And of course, Sherwin, I do understand it's a holiday there, but news never sleeps. The cycle keeps on going on and on. And I wonder if there's been any reaction on the U.S. front to the Lady R probe report.
So I'm glad you contextualize it in the context of the Labor Day weekend in the United States, which means the federal government is closed. Even the U.S. Embassy in Pretoria is closed. But we managed to extract a statement from David Feldman, the U.S. spokesperson at the embassy in Pretoria. And he says, "We appreciate the seriousness with which the panel of inquiry undertook to investigate Lady R's presence in South Africa in December 2022. Of course, the docking in Simonstown, the port in Simonstown. We appreciate President Ramaphosa's commitment to investigating the serious matter and look forward to advancing progress with our South African partners on our shared priorities, including health, trade, and climate," right? So statements sometimes, Bongawe, are not about what they say, but also about what they don't say. And what this statement doesn't say is that we are retracting our allegation against the South Africans based on the three-panel judicial report. We are not apologizing for our statement, and they give no indication of any consequence management for Ambassador Brigidi based on the very public allegations that impugned the reputation of South Africa around the world, right? So we have sought greater detail from the State Department. As I mentioned, the federal government is closed, but we are seeking answers to these questions. So while some people might be arguing that this is a matter that has been put to bed, there are certainly many, many questions that journalists will have to continue to ask, particularly as it relates to the basis for the allegations in the first place. The allegations don't now evaporate just because the report says otherwise. What were these allegations based on? And I think the United States and certainly the federal government in Washington will have to come to the fore to explain themselves a little better here.
And I suppose, Sherwin, also whether or not they've had sight of this particular report, because one can assume that maybe it would have been shared with them.
Yeah, and the president, of course, yesterday in his Sunday address to the nation, revealing that they will be releasing an executive summary of the report. We don't know if the United States has been privy to that information. One imagines that they will study a report of that nature before giving us a fulsome comment. But, you know, if you look at how the posture of the United States since the Brigidi allegations in May of this year, shortly afterwards, Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, tweeted about a conversation he had with Naledi Pandor, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, and he talked about reiterating the cooperation narrative on shared priorities, health, trade, climate, energy, that sort of thing. Then you'll also remember that there was a report out of the Politico news organization here in the United States in June of this year, quoting them that the Biden administration is furious with its ambassador in South Africa and scrambling to salvage relations with the country after the envoy alleged that Pretoria sent a ship filled with weapons to Russia as it wages its war on Ukraine. You will also remember the high-level diplomatic effort in the vein of the Minister in the presidency, the finance minister, the minister of trade, industry and competition, Patel and Chabeni Gonongwana, visiting the United States in July, engaging with members of Congress, with the business community, engaging with the trade representative, Ambassador Catherine Tai. So there's been a full bringing to bear of South Africa's diplomatic endeavor here, engaging in the United States. And of course, the big question will be a Goa forum in November, right? There were questions about whether that would go ahead based on a petition sent to the White House that, the AGOA Forum needs to be removed. And of course, the big ask for South Africa is to remain included in the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. And as you well know, Bongiwe, that big conversation comes up for renewal in 2025. So South Africa engaged in some heavy diplomatic lifting now based on the ambassador's allegations, but also to ensure that they secure South Africa's positioning within the continuation of the African Growth and Opportunity Act come 2025.
And right at the back of that, Sherwin, something that the president also mentioned in his statement yesterday is what he says is the continued non-aligned stance of South Africa. And that, of course, going to come into sharp focus with these developments as well, and especially when you look at AGOA, but also looking at the reaction to the latest developments around Lady R.
Yeah, I mean, that goes to the heart of the issue, right? South Africa's image on the international stage. And this was a big stab in the back, if you will, unless the Americans are going to say, hey, this is what we based our information on. This is why we believe that to be true at the time. But we're not hearing that. And we're also not hearing sort of an angry posture from the South African presidency, right? I mean, they were really put into the spotlight by these allegations in May. And you're not hearing that the ambassador is going to be declared persona non grata. You're not hearing from the South African presidency that they're mad about this. He kind of avoided, dealing with those sentiments as it relates to the allegations here. And so one really does wonder what is not being said. What are the South Africans not saying? What are the Americans not saying? And that's certainly going to be your and my job moving forward.